My wife and I spend a couple hours a week total managing the day-to-day of our extremely profitable 39 short-term rental listings that we own. And in this video, I'm going to share with you the systems that we use to make this possible and how you can do the exact same thing. At this point, I've taught hundreds of other people these systems that I'm about to share with you, and many of whom have gone on to create financial freedom in their own life. And one of the most common preconceived notions that people have around short-term rentals when they're first considering getting started with this is that they feel like short-term rentals are going to take up so much more time and require so much more effort than other investing strategies out there. But the reality is, and this is coming from someone who used to own long-term rentals, short-term rentals lend themselves really well to systems. So I'm going to walk you through the two main parts of the operations of our business, the tools that we use and the team structure to operate all the day-to-day. I also want to mention before we dive into it that I personally work with people through this whole process, not just the operations and the systems that I'm going to talk about today, but also how to identify great deals, how to buy them, how to finance them, how to get everything set up and create the experience for your specific ideal guest. So if you're interested in that process and working with me through the entire process to get a super high cash flowing short-term rental all set up and all your operations and systems in place, you can book a call with me at the link in the description below. All right, so jumping right into the systems that we use to operate our business. And I'm going to list these and go through each one in the order that I recommend adopting them in, because I don't recommend going out and adopting all these systems all at once. I think that's chaos. One of the great things about this business and about short-term rentals is that it can grow organically with you as you grow. So you'll be sold a lot on all these different third-party systems that you need, all these different softwares and tack-on systems. But the fact of the matter is, in the beginning, you just don't need almost any of them to get started. And that's the great thing about this. So I'll go through each of these, and in the description below, I created a list of all these so you can reference back to it. So again, none of these are needed in the beginning. The only system that you really need to have really successful operations in the beginning is Airbnb itself. That's how easy it is to get started. You can use this free app, Airbnb, to get started and operate your entire business initially with Airbnb. Airbnb has been around since 2010, and during that time, it's morphed a lot. There's been a lot of third-party softwares and systems. They sort of complemented Airbnb because it had very limited capabilities in the beginning. But what Airbnb has done over the years is they've taken this technology of these third-party softwares and just integrated it into Airbnb. And so the capabilities within Airbnb, just, from when we started back in 2017, it's changed a lot. And you can run your entire business with Airbnb with your first property. And I'm going to list some of the other ones that we recommend and when to tack these on. So beyond Airbnb, I know I just said you could start with just Airbnb, but in the beginning, in order to do better research and see some of the data and decide on a market, I do recommend a subscription to AirDNA. It used to be up until about 6 months ago, with the free AirDNA version, you could get all the information that you needed. But they changed their pricing model because they realized they were giving away too much information. And now the free version is basically useless. And so I do recommend temporarily in the beginning, while you're researching markets, use AirDNA just to narrow down where the highest nightly rate and occupancy is compared to the lowest average purchase price. And so you can see the averages in AirDNA. I don't think putting an address into AirDNA and going off their numbers, their analysis of a specific address, is a great idea, because I've seen it way far off many, many times. But I do like AirDNA just to narrow down to the right market. So that's probably the first software that I would recommend starting with. So we use AirDNA to help us narrow down to the right market. And then once you select a property, we look at the comparable short-term rentals around it to see how they're performing and see what you can expect in terms of nightly rate and occupancy based on their calendars and their reviews and their listings. And so now once you've picked a property and you're buying your first short-term rental, the only app that you need is Airbnb. A lot of people think that you need to start listing your property on all these different sites, and I don't recommend that in the beginning. I recommend just focusing on Airbnb, and there's a lot of reasons for that. Number one, you want to build up your profile on Airbnb as quickly as possible. Airbnb has the vast majority of the market share and bookings in most markets. So if you can build up your 5-star ratings and your profile as fast as possible, then you're going to get a lot more bookings. Number two, it's got this host guarantee insurance in place. So they insure any damages up to, I think it's $2 million now. So that helps protect you. And then number three, you also can screen your guests using AirDNA. So you can set it up to where you only allow bookings from well-vetted guests, like guests that have previous 5-star reviews, ones that are coming for reasons that make sense and not a huge party and things like that. So as opposed to trying to list on all these obscure sites or do direct bookings right from the start, I highly recommend just focusing on using the Airbnb app itself. Then as you grow, these are some of the other systems that we're going to implement. So pretty quickly, you're going to want to have a good system in place to manage your cleaners. Now, initially, we just used a shared calendar, a shared Google Calendar, and when bookings would come through, you can sync it with Airbnb itself, and the bookings would show up on the calendar so that the cleaner knew when to go to that property and clean. A more sophisticated version of this, and one that I recommend implementing pretty early on, is called Turno. There's another one called Breezeway. Both of these work really well. We use Turno, and what this allows you to do, you put all your cleaners in Turno, and then automatically you connect Turno to Airbnb so that automatically, as soon as you have a booking, it shows up and is assigned to the cleaner you want it to be assigned to. And then not only is it assigned to them, but a checklist, you can upload checklists for those cleaners, and you can upload specific instructions for different properties. And so then the cleaner has the app on their phone, they go there and they can click on when they start that clean, then they can click on when they finish the clean. They can upload all the pictures. If you have a messier guest, they can upload pictures of any damage or mess or anything like that. And then they can also upload pictures of once they're done, what the property looks like. So there's no discrepancy later on. And then you can set it up to automatically pay them through that app as well once the checklist and everything is complete. So Turno is a great service. It's come a long way over the years. I actually interviewed the founder of Turno when it was called Turnover B&B back in the day on my podcast, and there was still some bugs they were working out, but it's come a long way, and it's a great product at this point. So we use Turno right toward the beginning when you have your first couple properties, and then once you have a handful of properties, then I would recommend using PriceLabs. Wheelhouse is another pricing software, but PriceLabs I think is the leader in the space, and that's what we use. So in the beginning, again, you don't need this software for one property. You can go through other calendars, you can look at your competition, and you can set your own pricing. And I think there's so much benefit in the beginning to doing that, to setting the pricing up yourself, because you learn what seasonality looks like. And I always say pricing is an art and a science, because you want to understand every single day there's a different supply and demand curve, I guess, in that market, in that specific market. So you really want to understand what drives supply and demand in your market and what your competition looks like. And if you just kind of set it and forget it right from day one in PriceLabs and say, well, I'll just let the AI take care of it and they'll price it right, you're never really going to know if it's priced right. So I recommend on your first one, price the property yourself in the beginning, adjust it a few times a week manually. And then after you have a few properties, then start using PriceLabs. And it's a very low cost per property, per listing. And you can set up rules within PriceLabs to automatically adjust your pricing. It can be a certain price in the peak season and slower season. And then as you approach vacant days, it can adjust pricing on your behalf. I'm still in my pricing once a week at least. I'm in PriceLabs tweaking and adjusting because it's never going to be perfect based off of automation, but it's a great tool that once you start having, now that we have 39 short-term rental listings, there's no way I could adjust those all manually. So it's well worth it to have a tool like PriceLabs. The next system that I recommend implementing typically signifies a pretty big shift in most people's short-term rental businesses. And that is when you bring on a backend property management software. And so what a backend property management software does is it allows you to have one place where you can control all of the online travel agencies or the third-party booking softwares, right? So Airbnb is one of them, but Vrbo is another one, Booking.com is another one, and there's a whole bunch more out there. Hopper is another one. It also allows you to now create a direct booking site. So up until this point, I don't recommend doing a whole lot of direct bookings. You can take some here and there, and it's real simple to just send over a PayPal invoice and a booking agreement and do that a little bit more manually. But I don't think it's worthwhile when you just are starting out to create a direct booking site right from day one. I'd say master Airbnb first while you're growing your portfolio a little bit. And then what we see is when people get to about 4 or 5 properties, typically that's the tipping point for most people where now it makes a lot of sense. You've got enough economies of scale, enough cash flow coming in where you want to start growing your business and you want to start growing the bookings on other platforms. And so this makes it really easy because you have one centralized place where you can make pricing decisions, you can make updates to your listing, and it pushes it out to all the different sites. And then you can also start taking those direct bookings. And so as you start getting repeat guests or people want to come back to your property, you can now book them through other channels and you can take those direct bookings. So the property management software that we use, and we vetted a lot of them, and we've had some misstarts with some other ones, or some missteps, I guess, in the beginning, but we use OwnerRez, and it's been fantastic for us. The one thing I will say, it's a very comprehensive setup process. So it's a little bit arduous in the beginning. You have to go through a lot of questions and a lot of setup in the beginning, but because it's so comprehensive, it makes operations moving forward much easier and everything's a lot more seamless. And it's a pretty low cost. I can't remember exactly what it is, but it's the lowest of the other comparable short-term rental property management softwares we looked at. Guesty is another big one that a lot of people use. That's kind of, I think, OwnerRez's biggest competitor. And there's a lot of other smaller ones out there, but my recommendation is OwnerRez. This next system isn't a software, but it can happen simultaneously with setting up OwnerRez or your backend property management software. And this is where I recommend bringing on your first virtual assistant guest relations person. And they can actually help you set up your OwnerRez. Like I mentioned, it's pretty arduous. And so our team, our virtual assistants, helped us set up OwnerRez when we set it up the first time. And it was a huge weight lifted off our shoulders. And we actually hired somebody who had experience in short-term rental property management before, so they were already familiar with the platform. So I recommend at this point, typically it's like 4 or 5 properties where you have enough economies of scale and you have enough cash flow to where you can bring on a virtual assistant, even if it's part-time, to start taking these tasks off your plate, like replying to guests, or coordinating cleanings, or coordinating the handyman. So I'm going to get into virtual assistants a little bit more here in a second when I get into the team dynamic, but this is the point where I recommend a virtual assistant makes a lot of sense. The last 2 systems that we use and recommend implementing are because we have a virtual team and it allows us to stay connected. So the way that we've structured it is we have 4 full-time customer service or guest service team members, and they're located in the Philippines, which is on the opposite side of the planet. And because of the nature of the work, they work in shifts. And it's very important that we all stay synced on what's going on with all of our guests and the cleaning and the maintenance and all the things that are happening at all 39 of our short-term rental listings, especially right now during the busiest peak season. And so the first tool that we use for this is we use Slack, which I know a lot of people are familiar with, but this is a great communication tool, and I highly recommend it for internal team communication. So you can create a Slack channel that everybody's in and then set expectations around communication. And so the way we do it is that the team works typically in an 8-hour shift, and then at the end of their shift, they have a standardized report that they put in the Slack channel. There's sections. The first section is all the bookings that happen. Second section is all the cleanings that happen. The third section is all the maintenance that's going on. And then the fourth section is operations and other notes. So that way, the next person who's taking over the shift knows exactly what happened on the previous shift and they know exactly what's going on. And then I can monitor that as well from a strategic standpoint. And then we can meet once a week over Zoom and we can talk through any issues or the current system and the setup, and we can tweak the system and just make sure everything's operating very smoothly. And finally, the last tool that we use is a project management software. And there's a lot of them out there. The one that we use specifically is Asana. What Asana allows us to do is put tasks and projects into the software, and then everybody on the team, including our handyman and cleaners, can see what's happening on a day-to-day basis. And we can assign different tasks to different people, and we can monitor the progress. So when you have a lot of different maintenance going on and different cleanings and different things that are happening on a day-to-day basis in the business, this allows you to stay really, really organized. So those are all the systems that I recommend using. And again, the great part about this is you don't need any of them in the beginning, and you can tack them on to your business as you grow and organically add on the systems that you need, as opposed to investing in all this infrastructure up front that's just not necessary. So if that was helpful, hit the like button so I know that that was helpful, and I'll create more content like this. Now, let's talk about how to structure the teams. Most people think when they're getting into short-term rental investments, the first person they need to go out and hire is a short-term rental property manager. And my opinion probably varies from others on this, but I just don't feel like this is necessary. And we've never used a short-term rental property manager. We have 39 extremely successful short-term rentals. And like I said at the beginning, we spend a few hours a week on our existing properties. The reason that this is my advice is because a short-term rental property manager typically charges somewhere between 20 to 30% of your income. So you're paying them 20 to 30% off the top, say 25% on average, right? So that's a quarter of your income that comes in goes to the property manager. The big thing that property manager does is they hire a good handyman and a good cleaner who's going to do the handyman and cleaner, all the boots on the ground activities, right? A lot of times that property manager isn't even local to that area. So they're going out and hiring all the boots on the ground activities, and they're taking a 25% cut of your income to do that. So what we've done instead is we go directly to the source and hire a really great handyman and cleaner, and we keep that 25%. And so I'm going to talk through the structure of our team here and show you why this might be a setup that you want to look into as well. So we've had some missteps and made some mistakes around our team structure along the way, and that's why I'm creating this video, to share with you some of those things and share with you some of the nuances around how to be successful when building your team. So there's 4 main team member categories. These grow as you grow, but in the beginning, I'd highly recommend having a really great handyman and a really great cleaner. And I call them handyman and cleaner, but it's really a handyman and cleaner plus. These are people who can do almost all of the boots on the ground activities. So first, let's talk about the cleaner. So what most people will do is they'll search for cleaning services in the area, and will pop up first is typically larger cleaning services that have a lot of customers in the area. And this can work, but we've had issues with this, and I've seen a lot of other people have issues with this as well, because larger cleaning companies, typically they'll have a department that takes the customer and that deals with the customer, and then they send out typically minimum wage cleaners that are different each time to the property. And their interest is in getting in there and getting the cleaning done as quickly as possible in an adequate way, right? And they may or may not be used to Airbnbs, and they may not be used to your particular standards. And so what happens is each time a different cleaner shows up, you really don't know what you're going to get. And so the quality kind of can suffer. And so instead, what we found to be extremely effective is to find someone who is a cleaner themselves, like they're a 1099, that's what they do. Maybe it's a part-time gig that they do, or they are a small cleaning company, where it's like one person and they have maybe 1 or 2 helpers that help them, so they can take out a little bit more volume, but it's still that same person going to the property every day that you can build a relationship with. And by having a direct relationship with the person who's actually going to the property, it allows you to create a standard and have a dialogue around how to best clean this property and keep the standard super high, as opposed to someone who's nameless and faceless and just goes there and checks a box. So then the big question is, how do you find these great local cleaners? And we've gone through a lot of different ways to find and screen cleaners. And the number one way that we found is to look at track record, right? So ask for referrals who have a great track record. Typically, people, and this goes beyond cleaning, typically people do what they've always done, right? So if they're really good at cleaning, they're going to continue to be really good at cleaning. If they've struggled at cleaning quality in the past, you're not going to make them a great cleaner. Like, that's just the quality of their cleaning. So if you talk to everyone that you know in that area and you say, hey, who cleans your house? And if they say, well, Susie cleans my house, she does a great job, obviously she does a great job if she's still cleaning their house. So it's pretty easy to find people who have cleaners who have been successful for them that are willing to refer them over. And if they say, well, I don't have a house cleaner, then you say, well, do you know 2 or 3 other people in the area that might have their house clean? And there's enough people out there that have their house clean that all of a sudden you'll start to get all these referrals, and then you can allow them to clean based on your checklist, which I'll include our checklist for cleaners in the description of this video so you can download that below, and you provide them with the checklist and the standard, pictures of what it should look like when it's clean, and then you can go in afterwards and just make sure that the quality is as high as you expect it to be. And the other key team member for all the boots on the ground activities is having a really good handyman. And very similarly, we don't recommend going out and hiring a big handyman company. Typically, these companies will nickel and dime you as a short-term rental owner, and it's not going to be worthwhile for you to work with them. What you need typically is somebody who's just a very handy person who's looking for part-time work. And it's, again, that same person who's coming to the property. You can develop a relationship with them, and you can also have dialogue around how to make it as efficient for both of you as possible. So we do things like, if we have issues come up that we want the handyman to address, but they're not emergency issues, we'll try to clump them together so they can knock out several different issues in one trip, as opposed to constantly coming and going at the property. We also work with typically people who are local to the area, and they have some time on their hands and they're willing to be on call, because you never know when the Wi-Fi is going to go out, or you have a guest have an issue with the stove or with your digital locks or something like that, and you need somebody to be boots on the ground and be able to go over there. The best handyman that we've worked with over the years have typically been someone who's retired or retirement age, and they've scaled back from their day-to-day work, but they're very handy and they have time on their hands and they want to stay gainfully employed, And so it can be something that doesn't take up a ton of their time, but it can be something that gives them a lot of purpose and allows them to still have a part-time gig that they enjoy, and allows them to, use their skills, but yet it's not costing you an arm and a leg like a lot of the big handyman companies charge. I would say the handyman and cleaner typically handle about 90% of the boots on the ground activities that need to be done, because you're having cleanings done between every guest, and you'll have deep cleans here and there that the cleaner handles, and you'll have the handyman come over for touch-ups between guests or emergency calls when a guest is there. And so that's about 90%. And so then the other category of team member that we have that does boots on the ground activities is sort of these ancillary services. So typically you could have your handyman also cut the grass, but typically, you're going to hire a grass cutting service because it's just more efficient. And that's all they do. That's probably the cheapest way to have it done. You might have a pool, and so you're going to have a pool person come over to treat the pool or hot tub on a weekly basis. So you'll have some small services here and there, but again, the handyman and cleaner are the main boots on the ground team members that you need. The final team member is someone that I kind of alluded to earlier in the video, and that is a really high talented guest services team. And this is such a critical component of your business as you start to grow, because they can literally take all of the day-to-day components off your shoulders so that you can rise above the business and you can look at it from a strategic level, and you can continue to grow the business, which is the highest and best use of your time as a business owner. But if you're mired in the day-to-day, then there's no way that you can see what you need to see and do the things you need to do to continue to grow that business. I'm going to put a link in the description below to the company that helped us hire our team. And we have such an awesome team. We have 4 full-time team members that have worked as short-term rental property managers for years. They had years of experience before we even hired them. They speak perfect English. That one of them even used to work at Airbnb itself. And the way that we've structured the team, and keep in mind, we have 39 short-term rental listings, but we have 4 full-time team members. And so we have 3 of them that work as customer or guest relations people, speaking to the guests. They work in shifts. And then we have 1 guest services manager who manages the team of the other 3. And she does a lot of the other, operational level activities where, she helps improve the systems in the background while the team is assisting with the guests. and it gives us so much more time back to grow the business as the business owners. So again, I recommend when you get to about 4 or 5 properties, that's when it really makes sense to bring on your first virtual guest services person, and you can bring them on and they can start taking all of these tasks off your shoulders. And then as you add more properties over time, you can consistently grow your team with the number of properties that you have. So if you think about it, if you bring in a property manager, you're still going to pay the handyman. You're still going to pay the cleaner. You're still going to pay your lawn guy. The only person that would potentially replace is your virtual guest services person, but that's actually probably one of your most affordable team members. And what I've noticed after looking at a lot of short-term rentals is that typically the ones with the property managers have the lowest reviews. Because if you think about it, like a property manager makes their money based off of volume. The more properties they can manage, the more money they make, right? And so you start to become a commodity and the quality level drops. But our team is just focused on our properties, and we can create a high standard, and we can have internal dialogue with all the different moving pieces in the business, and we can maintain a really high quality, a really high standard, personalized guest experience that our guests have come to expect. So once again, if this is making sense to you, and if you want to work with me through the entire process of finding a great market, a great deal, how to set it all up, how to get all these operations that I just talked about in place, you can book a call with me at the link in the description below. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video. It means a lot to me. I know you have a lot of choices and videos you can watch out there. So I appreciate you taking the time. God bless, and I'll see you in the next video.